Salam and good day to everybody. We are going to continue the lecture for the engineering in society, which is still related to the hazards and the at the workplace. For the PowerPoint slides here, right? I think that I already touched this one in the past lecture. So I'm going to skip this one. So we are going to look at the terms for the dangers and the risk. Okay, so what is danger? This is all the terms that you need to remember and understand, because we are going to learn two terms over here, which is one they call it danger, and the other one you call it risk. So the danger is the expresses the relative exposure to the hazard. So means that you know that from the hazard, right, which is going to be a very dangerous or not, something like that. So you just the express of the relative exposure to the hazard means that you can see that the danger is not really very dangerous, and also it can be not really that dangerous for the particular type of hazard. And then you have the risk. So the risk is what? The risk is actually a combination of the probability that a particular outcome will occur and the severity of the harm involved. So risk normally is related to the possibly the bad things, I think, about the risk that you're going to face. So the risk is something that the probability that you are not going to measure it by a figure, but something that you know there is a probability whether it is a risk or not for you to take up something. So a risk is a risk, a danger is a danger. So these two terms is related for this particular to this lecture. So what we're going to do today is actually we are going to look at the how we are going to do the risk management process. So when you work, right, when you work in industry or whatever place that you work, you may encounter some hazards in your workplace. So this hazard, right, for you as an engineer, maybe an engineer or maybe the staff for the related to the safety or whatever it is, you must understand all this one and try to remove this hazard, so to make sure that the workplace is a place for you and it's very safe. So you don't want a hazard to be in your workplace. So you as an engineer, you also have to understand the hazard. Then you have to know that how to eliminate those things and how to control those things. So this is a process. This is a process that you need to do. You need to understand how it works. So you must follow the process correctly. Okay, what we're going to do today is we are going to do the risk management process. So this is the risk management process. We have these steps to do this management process. The risk, we are going to do the management of the risk here. So first thing is you need to identify the hazard. Then you have to do the assessment and prioritize of the risks. Okay. Next, you're going to minimize and control the risk. You want to make sure you are going to eliminate. The best case is to eliminate the hazard, the risk. But if you cannot eliminate it 100%, then you have to know that you have to suggest a process that can lower down the risk. Okay. Then you're going to control the risk, and finally you're going to do the closure, which is to check and review the risks. So we're going to discuss each of these processes. Okay, first one, of course, identification. First, you need to identify the risk and the hazard. So for example, that you have this picture. So you're working at this industry, for example, then you have to know that which one is going to be a problem or the hazards over here. For example, here and here, this is maybe a nuclear factory, something. So you have to identify what types of hazard at your workplace. Okay, that's the first one. Very simple. Identify the hazard. So the second one is to do the assessment. So this is going to be a bit tricky. This is going to be a bit long process, because you need to understand how you want to do the assessment. Okay, so the overall process of hazard identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluation is called the assessment. You have to assess whether that hazard is very dangerous or not dangerous. You have to assess possible, you and maybe some other staff which is related to the safety. Then you have to discuss with each other and come up with a final assessment for the risk on the hazard at your workplace. Okay, so how to assess and how to do the assessment, right? So we are giving you two methods. The first one they call it qualitative, and the second one they call it quantitative. This is a process to assess. Okay, what are the differences on these two things, qualitative and quantitative? Okay, let's look at the first one. The qualitative is more on very subjective things, okay, versus the quantitative is more on the objective things. So it's very simple. If you look at these two approach, the subjective is more on like the perceptions, where you are going to assess, maybe just you can give a number of that, right? Number, something like that. And then you can give the consequences or maybe the likelihood. Like for example, you are going to give a number based on you think that that is actually the level of the danger for the hazard. So it's very qualitative, it's very subjective. Versus the quantitative is more on objective and it must have a data. So maybe in a year you have a data here, then you can come up with the quantitative assessment from the particular accidents. So let's go for the first one. Go for the qualitative subjective method first. So this is more on the perception. So you are going to do the maybe you are going to discuss with your team, and you are going to make it something you are going to discuss for particular hazard, right? So you're going to look at this hazard. You're going to give a number or maybe a range, a level for this particular hazard, whether it's going to be a very frequent, for example like this, it's going to happen every time, probable, occasional, remote, or improbable, for example like this. So you're going to give them a number, right? So this is 5, so you're going to give a number. So the least one will be 1, so unlikely. So this is not unlikely, so this is going to be, and so on. For the most frequent one, you're going to give 5 numbers. So this is a number that you can give. This is about the frequency of the accident happen. Okay, for example, you are going to assess on the likelihood of somebody work in the what you call that, construction area, right? So maybe he's going to have the accident where the wall break or whatever that going to hit his head when he walks down from a construction here. There's a possibility of danger, right? So you're going to look at this description. You're going to look at, you're going to discuss with yourself with, or among your friends or among your team. You're going to decide what is going to be the frequency of the accident might happen, because this is perceptions. So that is about the likelihood whether it's going to happen or not. And then the consequences for this particular accident, right? Is it going to be a very catastrophic, or is it going to be very critical, marginal, or negligence, or you can remove it out. Here also you are going to put a number here. The most least negligible is going to be 1, and the catastrophic will be 4. So these are the numbers that relate to each other. Okay, so for example, catastrophic, of course, this is going to be a death or system loss, right? So for possible, right, this guy, when get hit from the brick wall here without the safety helmet, he might die. So that it will be a catastrophic. So you know that from this case, it can be 4 category. In 4 category, this is the hazard category, and this is the frequency of the occurrence. So these are the two the two definitions for the likelihood and the consequences. So these are the numbers, you have to look at it. Alright? So after that, what you need to do is you must have the qualitative risk matrix. So this matrix is the metrics that being given. I mean, this is something like a rubric for you to assess for any hazard. For example, is you are going to have a dengue epidemic, for example, like this, right? You're going to look at the wall break at the. This is two different things, dengue epidemic at the construction site, or maybe the wall break hit the head, right? So this is one hazard. This is second hazard. So each of the hazard might have these categories based on these two description. Is it going to be likelihood or consequences? So you can see that this is mapped to each other. So this is the occurrence. So this is the, what do you call it just now? The hazard of the categories. So you're going to see that this is the numbers. So what are the numbers here? So from these two figures, you can see that if you have the frequent likelihood of the hazard and it's going to be a catastrophic, so you're going to times this number. 5 times 4 is equivalent to 20. So like for example here, 5 times 4, this is 5 times 3, this is the numbers, this is the whole thing. So you can see that 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 3 is 12, 4 times 2 is 8. So this is the risk matrix. So you have to know that when you choose something, right? For example, just now here, you are saying that this is going to be a probable things. For example, the wall break, maybe it's going to be occasional or probable 3, but it can be a catastrophic, right? So 3 times 4 is going to be this one. 3 times 4 is going to be this one. So you are putting a risk in the matrix here at 12, and based on this risk metric, you are going to look at this particular risk criteria, and you look at these numbers here. Of course, white is very negligible. You can use very low risk, and you put 12 over here, this is going to be a high risk. So you know that for a wall break to hit the head is going to be it's going to be a very high risk over here. So let's look at the dengue also can be a fatal thing, so it can be high also. Let's try to have maybe a worker is going to tip off a block on the construction site. So mean you're leaving out the block here, and then this guy is what do you call this one? Tripping on this one, right? And then he fall down. Just fall down means that it's probably is not really going to have fatal things. It's going to be maybe marginal thing, minor injury. So probably occasionally around 3. So 3 times 2 is about 6. So you're going to have over here, maybe around here 6, right? Maybe here just now is what? So occasional 3, marginal 2, occasional should be here. So this is going to be in medium risk. So you know that this is going to be the risk matrix for the particular hazard. So the risk matrix is the one that we develop, but you can develop differently. It's up to you. Maybe it's going to be 5 row to 5 row, but in this case, this example, you're going to have 5 times 4. This is a 5 row and 4 column. Sorry, this is a 5. This is column. Yeah, this is column. This is column. Row 5. This is column. So maybe you have another one. Maybe just maybe you have here 5. It's up to you. So you can do the changes over here. But in this case, right? In this case, we have the example of having this one. All right. So based on this one, you have to do the risk matrix and find out what is going to be your hazard risk. All right. That's going to be the assessing the risk. This is about the qualitative, means that you are going to base on perceptions. And then based on that one, right, you know that this is going to be high, medium, low. So based on whatever that you choose, right, so you're going to make an immediate action based on if you hit high risk, then you're going to do this one up to the actions that we have based on the medium, high, and low situation. So this is the approach after you have this particular risk metric completed. All right. So let's move on. This is quite very simple. You have to do this qualitative matrix, right? And then you have the quantitative objective. This is very objective because you are going to get the data from the particular year, the accidents or whatever. Then you know that the severity of the frequency and the severity of the injury, something like that. So what are the terms? What is the terms? What are the terms that you're going to be learned here is you're going to learn about the frequency rates of the accident and frequency rates of the injury. So there are two formula. There are two formulae here. Okay, the first one we are going to look at the frequency rate here. What are the formulas stated here? The formula is frequency rate is equivalent to A times B divided by C, where B is the base that differs. B is the numbers that's going to be different if you're going to use two different method. One, they call it the NC. The second one, they call it BLS. This is Bureau of Labor Statistics. The first one is NC. So the number here, A, is the event for which of the frequency rate is to be computed. Okay. B is the numerical base. And the third one is the exposure in hours. Okay. So you look at here, for the American National Standard Institute for NC, we're going to have these numbers, 1 million man hours. Whereas in Bureau of Labor Statistics, we're going to use 200,000 hours per year. This is the difference on the B for this particular frequency rate. Okay, so where it got the 200,000? It based on these numbers where it's going to take around 100 full-time employees would work. This is 100 day. It takes 100 hours. This is just a formula. So finally, you're going to have these 200,000 for hour per year. Then this is going to be used in the formula. So let's look at the example here. If a plant had 18 accidents per year, so that's why he has a number. He has the data here. This is A, during which employee work a total of 1,200,000. This is exposure. Okay, if during the same period there were 6 disabling injuries, so what is the accident frequency rate? So you go back to this particular frequency rate, accident frequency rate. You need to put all this value. Okay, for the NC, the B is equal to 1 million hours. And then you have the rate is about 18 because this is 18 accident per year. So you're going to get 15 per million man hours for the accident rate. For the injury is because of only 6, in these 6 disabling injuries, for the injury frequency rate, you're going to have this value 5 per million. So it's the same procedure for the BLS method. So you can see that the changes is on the B base over here, but the number is the same. And of course, due to these two numbers are not the same, you're going to get a different number based on the B value over here. So when we talk about this particular accident frequency rate or injury rate, right, you must know that which method that it used, whether it's NC or in BLS with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Okay, so that's just for the short quantitative objective, quantitative process as is the risk. So this is the risk, means that after that you know what is the risk of the particular hazard. Then you have to take actions on that. Of course, if the accident rate is high, of course you need to find out, you need to plan how to solve and how to reduce the hazard or the risk. Okay, so that's why they come up with the control, which is where you need to eliminate. This is a process of eliminations or inactivations of a hazard in a manner such that the hazard does not pose risk to workers who has to enter into the area of work on equipment in the course of work. Of course, you have to control the risk. So that's why you have to come up, you have to decide, you have to give an idea how to work on that. but not most of the idea can be implemented, right? So you can try to reduce the risk. For example, here we have possibly this is the best solution. You have the problems where the lead-based paint can cause a lung cancer. This is because of this lead. Maybe you want to change it to water-based. This is going to be a zero issue on the lung cancer. But of course, in the paint system, right, in the paint formula, you can use water-based. Of course, later, if you use this one, when you use your paint in your house, when rains comes down, then of course, your paint is going to be peeled off. So this is sort of example that when you have an idea, right, then you have to know that whether the idea is compatible or is it practical or not to be used. Okay? So this is possible the control process, the risk control process, and is divided into two sections. This first one, they call it engineering method, and the second one, they call it the administrative method. So engineering is sort of like you have to invent something to solve the problem, to reduce the risk, to eliminate the problem, the hazard. Administration is not really related to the designing things or creating new stuff, but most likely how you are going to manage. You have to do the what you call that, the process, the rules. For example, maybe in a system that requires 2 person in the lab, you are putting the rules. You must have a buddy inside the lab to make sure that it can work together. So this is a process. For example, here you have the problem here. So you are going to work on the design of the chair, design of this one. It's up to the ergonomics equipment to be created. So this is how to solve this issue. Possibly you have the problem here, right, at the back. This is all related to the and the first and last time on the slides, where when you are sitting too long, and you're going to have a problem with that. And then we have another problems here. Maybe this is actually going to be the steam or something that is very dangerous. So this guy is putting a container here, a cover over here, to make sure that there's no steam going out. Possibly this is going to be a very toxic. So this is about designing the isolation. So this another possible, this is designing this ear protection here. So this is going to be helping the guy who's working in the very noisy area to help reduce the risk of having issues on his ears. So this is more on engineering stuff, right? And you have the administrative is some sort of the things that, for example, here, this is going to be clean up. For example, of course, if you have a spill of oil, right? So you're not going to create something engineering things to clear up the oil. So this guy can just clean up this oil. So it means that the hallway can be safely and not slippery when you guys walking on the way. Okay, and then you have the rules of using dress code safety rules. Make sure that you use lab coat when you are working in the lab, something like that. And then of course you also have maybe the rules. You have to tie your hair to make sure that there will be no problems. For example, when you light up the fire or whatever it is going to be reducing up the risk of having that problem. So I would ask this one. So if your company choose to reduce the number of people exposed to the hazard by different shift and time, it happens right now, right? So it means that right now for PKP, so not everybody can come to the office. So do you think it's engineering process or it's administrative process? So you have to decide this one in the quiz. Okay, let's move on. Another thing that you can do is using the personal protective equipment. We call it PPE. This is very common. Of course, when you work at the construction area, so this is the one that you can see that people walk in the plus, especially at night time, right? So this is going to be reflective. So this is going to help them being identified on the road. So this is all the thing. This is about the safety shoe. All right, this is a goggle, this is ear muff, this is your gloves. This one I'm not really sure, this may be hat, something like that. So this is all the PPE, this is a personal protective equipment. This is going to reduce the risk when you use this one, right? So this is the control method. And then finally, once you have all these, right, and you implement this one, you must have a process to check the effectiveness of the safety risk management. Means that you can come up with the data later in the future based on this particular implementation of your plan. You are going to look at the hazard again or not. So there is going to be a check for the effectiveness, because you must know that you must check your system, you must check your plan whether it's working or not. Okay, so that is the process. So again, if you go to the processes just now, the first one is identification, then you do the assessment, then you try to minimize and monitor the control, then you're controlling the risk, finally you're going to check and reviewing the risk. So this is the risk management process. Okay, let's look at on this one for this particular image, right? So you can look at the hazard control here. So of course, most effective is to eliminate the hazard, but of course, you may not able to remove everything. So of course, at the end, the lowest thing that you have least effective is going to use the PPE. So this is the pyramid of the hazard control. Which one is the most effective? Which one is the least effective? All right. Okay. In our country, we have OSH. I think this is about the safety health officer, something like that. So we all the companies should have this one, because in order to achieve what we want to do just now, right? The review, the identification, the assessment, all those things, it must go through this OSH at workplace. Okay, so in Malaysia, this is a very systematic process. They call it HIRARC, which is the same thing that I present just now. This is the one that basis occupational and safety, OSH, right, in Malaysia being used. So this is the term HIRARC. The first one is the hazard identification, and then you do the risk assessment, and then you're going to use the risk control, which is the same thing what we had learned just now. But we are going to use this term because this is the one that being systematic process being used in Malaysia. It is mandatory under the law, so you must have this one. If you own a company, you must have this one. All right, to make sure that the place that your workers working is very safe. Okay, why we need this? This is all about the theory, which is to enable and organizations to manage hazard effectively. Okay, this is the way. The things that you know that you must manage the hazard, so you must have this particular process, and then to identify whether the current control is sufficient. This is all controlled by these people. All right, so whether it's correct or not. And then this is the responsibility to comply with the law. You can see that there's an act for this one, occupational safety and health, this one. And this is to comply with the management, the system standard. This is all the things which is compulsory to the company. So the HIRARC is a compound word made of 3 consecutive activities, which is hazard identifications, risk assessment, and risk control. Okay, this is very simple. Hazard identification, risk assessment, and risk control. Okay, this is again the steps, nearly the same just now, maybe a bit different, but most of it going to be the same like we have learned just now. It's going to be identify, and then identify the hazard, right? And then conduct assessment, and then check the assessment here, and then look here, and then decide how to control it. So it's a same process over here. And then again, this is just the flowchart of that. And then you normally have the personnel of HIRARC team in the company. This is normally the trained personnel in the hazard ID and risk assessment. Of course, in the big company, right? When you work in a big company, it has its own small clinic, something like that. So it also have this OSH people, the safety guy, who look whatever potential hazard that it has in the company. All right, this is all the people that related to the HIRARC people. Okay, I think that's for the lecture. And then there's another lecture that I think that you guys can go through by yourself, which is the safety. I think it's about the culture, how to create a culture for the safety. I'm going to put that particular slides in the same in the Microsoft team for you to read. That's very simple topics, but here you need to understand about the hazard, about the terms of danger and risk, and how to do this risk management process. Okay, I think that's all for this chapter. You're going to complete your quiz for 10 questions. All the best then. Thank you.